The Oris Aquis Pro 4000 meters. An absolute enthusiast, true deep dive watch that can go down to 4000 meters. The thing is built like a tank, both in terms of functionality, but also in pure dimensions. Not a lot of people buy these types of watches, but I'm here to argue that this watch is a better choice than a Deep Sea Challenge or a Planet Ocean. Yes, I said an Oris is better than the deepest diving Rolex and the deepest diving Omega. I probably have to explain why though. Let's dive in. This watch is an absolute 49.5mm behemoth. It has a lug-to-lug of 55mm and it's 23.4mm thick. This thing is huge. Granted, it will get you down to 4000 meters, and with the Oris caliber inside, you can stay down there for close to 120 hours, excluding decompression, of course. You get a rubber strap and all the usual deep sea diver bells and whistles for $6,200. Let's get it out of the way. This watch is comically large. I do not have the wrists to pull this off, and anybody on the list for a Black Bay 54 is likely going to be disappointed. Putting anything this size, unless you're The Rock, is going to look silly. Aesthetically though, that means ignoring how it looks on the wrist, the watch actually looks pretty good. The lugs come across as, again, comically short, and that's because when you've got a 50mm case, if you're just going to go for some semblance of wearability, well then you have to make sure you have short lugs, and that's going to make for some stubby proportions. On the case, you have a big old crown surrounded by the obligatory crown guards. The guards are the opposite of overpowering and suit the design really well. The dive bezel sits atop the case with substantial height. The bezel is surrounded by vulcanized rubber and has a signature Oris locking mechanism where you lift the ring, rotate, and then push down the ring again. It's quite cool. Whether the vulcanized rubber is the best from a handling perspective over something more classic like a Doxa shark's tooth bezel is not something I'm qualified to judge. I'm not going to 4,000 meters of depth below the ocean anytime soon, so, whatever. It's cool though. You get a dome crystal, which, although adding likely unavoidable height due to the thickness of the glass needed, actually kind of looks quite cool and gives the watch a really weird retro feel. The dial itself is a gradient blue from a black outer to a blue in the center. You get applied markers, plenty of lume, and a wave pattern on the dial, which reminds me of the bit of the wave dials you see on a Seamaster 300M. Overall, for a ridiculously sized and more or less unwearable everyday beta watch, this thing looks good, and it's better than the Planet Ocean 6000 and the Deep Sea Challenge. It's the best of the three. But the Rolex goes to 11,000 meters, you say. The Planet Ocean Ultra Deep goes to 6,000 meters. This one only goes to 4,000. It can't possibly be the best. People are not entirely wrong. Like I've made abundantly clear in this video, this watch isn't something a whole lot of people are going to buy. These watches are made primarily to prove your serious diving credentials as a watchmaker. You build these watches to tell the world we are the best at making tool watches, and it's basically a measuring contest about who can go deepest. Rolex and Omega hold that crown by a mile, but the Oris is still better. Like I said, one of the key goals of a watch like this is to establish your credentials, 4,000 meters. That's good enough for me. Oris has convinced me that if they had enough time, they could likely put together an even bigger brick that can go all the way down to 12,000 meters. 4,000 meters is more than reasonable. The reason Oris wins, though, is because of another criteria. Creativity. In the world of car manufacturing, you have the prevalence of concept cars. These are cars where designers get to go crazy and come up with weird and wonderful designs to showcase their creative prowess. The designers get free rein to express themselves. To some extent, it's used to challenge and test out ideas about design, aerodynamics, and so on. But the CEO of Volkswagen once said that from a financial perspective, concept cars did not make sense. They were primarily there as an institutional outlet for creativity. That's sort of corporate shorthand for my designers get really bored of drawing boxes with wheels, so every now and again we let them go crazy. And this is where we start with the Planet Ocean. It's a good-looking watch, classic dive-style case. You have a relatively sleek design, excluding of course the size and the heft of the watch. The dials are mostly really well executed, some better than others, but overall there's likely one you would look at and think, I could wear that. And then you put it on and are reminded that you have a 51.9mm lug-to-lug, 18.1mm in thickness, and a case diameter of 45.5 millimeters. Every dimension is markedly smaller than the Oris, which is an impressive feat of engineering, but it's still pretty much unwearable. More importantly though, it's just a Planet Ocean, but bigger. Then we have the Deep Sea Challenge. I'm going to say it. This is without a doubt one of the most boring watches on the planet. It's an oversized Submariner in titanium. Nothing more, nothing less. Everything is a Submariner. The case, the lugs, the bezel, the crown guards, the bracelet. There is nothing here except an oversized and completely and utterly unwearable Submariner. This is not unsurprising for Rolex, but what's the point? None of us are going to go down to the Mariana Trench, so buying this type of watch has to give you something different, something special. It needs to be that concept car where you see that the designers have put some creative thought into the aesthetic of the watch. And the Oris, it's not just a bigger Oris Aquis. The Pro keeps the signature lug design of the regular Aquis. The size is big, bigger than the Omega, bigger than the Rolex. Oris hasn't quite perfected things in terms of structural integrity versus size. Rolex and Omega ultimately go deeper in an overall thinner watches. So although technically quite impressive, it's not quite at that level of the competition. The strap is the same as the Aquis, albeit with a different color. But the key design change, of course, are the bezel and the crystal. The crystal itself with the dome is implemented in a way that, although most likely a consequence of the technical requirements, has a domed characteristic which sets it very clearly apart from the regular Aquis. Then you have the bezel, which reminds me very, very much of a Seiko tuner. The actual mechanism is unique and kind of cool, and the aesthetic implementation of that same mechanism is also not just relatively good looking, it's also unique. The Planet Ocean Ultra Deep is good looking, but basically just a boring larger version of the regular Planet Ocean. The Deep Sea Challenge gives you nothing in terms of eye-catching aesthetics that you don't also get with the Submariner. The Oris, however, is thoroughly original. Thoroughly good looking, or as good looking as a brick this size can be. Does this make the Oris the best option out there? No, not quite. It's pretty high up there, but there are 3 watches that I would definitely consider that come close. Again, like I said, this is a deep diver for depths where none of us will ever actually go. It's not about being a normal, regular looking dive watch. This is a concept car, a conversation piece, and therefore needs to be able to carry a conversation. The Oris does that, but there's another Omega. It doesn't go to 4,000 meters. It only goes to 1,200. I know that's a total bummer, but it is, of course, the Ploprof. It's the OG dive watch concept car. Personally, I think the new version in the Omega Deep Blue version with a couple of design changes is an absolute stunner. It does cost 3 times as much as the Oris, so you would be forgiven for not choosing the Ploprof. But here, in this space, now is the chance to do something completely different. Like I said, this is the conversation piece. The Oris blows the Rolex and the Omega out of the water. The Ploprof is way more expensive, but maybe that means that this time you should take a look at some other brands you never usually look at. How about a Sin or a Doxa? Doxa has the 300T and the 1500T. Now the Doxa doesn't live up to the criteria of being the concept version in the 1500 model. But as opposed to Omega or Oris or Rolex, chances are most people don't have a Doxa to begin with. It's really a niche diver, and I understand why you don't want your daily wearer to have that very special aesthetic that the classic orange Doxa does. But this isn't going to be your daily diver. This is the special watch. And there, a Doxa 1500T or a Sin UX SDR is right there for the taking. The Sin, by the way, goes to 5,000 meters in depth. So why not go for those? They're less expensive, they're just as capable, and they add some diversity and uniqueness to your collection. All those concerns you have about it being wearable and matchable to your daily wear is irrelevant. Here, in this segment, you can go a little bit mad. So why not? But you won't. Realistically, you won't buy the Doxa 1500T or the Zin or the Oris. Like I've said many times, this watch is the concept car of the world. Concept cars aren't really meant to be driven. Few of us will actually need the characteristics that this watch actually delivers. This watch is for the niche ultra dive watch collector, or of course a larger individual with significant above average wrist size. This person also does not wear any clothing that has a cuff. So no, don't bother buying this watch. It's too big, it's ungainly and essentially useless for the vast majority of us. It is, however, very cool. And for me, it has succeeded in doing what it was intended to do. It was the Oris concept car. It caught my attention. It demonstrated that Oris can be creative in the interpretations of their core watches, and it also serves to cement Oris's credentials in terms of their ability to make a serious dive watch. Oris have actually been kind of first mover for a while. The Diver 65 is a heritage desk diver. The regular Aquis is first and foremost the eco-friendly desk diver. I never gave much thought to Oris's actual dive credentials, but with a model like this, Oris makes their presence known, just like they did with the movement technology and skeletonization skills with the ProPilot X, just like they did with the Diver 65, which to me was likely the watch that started the trend towards the reintroduction of heritage skin divers, like the Seiko 62 MAS reinterpretations, like the Glashütte CQ and the Black Bay 54. You don't have to buy this watch, and you probably won't. But honestly, if you learn one thing from this release, it is that you should pay attention to Oris. Let me know what you think in the comments. Like, subscribe. Cheers.